Hello everyone. The title of today's episode is Controversial Beginnings to Uncontroversial Endings. You see, there are many aspects of the human mind that project a sense of reality, which is itself. What that means is when you're really looking at what you are, there isn't much you can see aside from what is here. And when you look at what is here, your sense of time and space is no longer segmented in a way where your memories have to create it on your subtler planes. You're directly experiencing life as you always have been, but more consciously, for the time is not segmenting it to then give you unknown factors. So the way man's knowing works is actually present through a very multi-dimensional and multi-plane sense of intelligence, if I can say that. So right now that I'm speaking, based on how much I'm recognizing words, I'm communicating. But when I look at the subtlety of where even a word comes into my awareness, that dimension of self-view is not a have-to individual thing, objective thing. Have to be individual, the objective thing. So let's explain it like this. You go skydiving, you come back, you want to explain it to your friend. And your friend's read about skydiving on Wikipedia, but he hasn't gone to it. And he's like, oh man, I know exactly what you mean. I know, I've been to it, you know. And you ask him, have you? And he's like, yeah, I know what it is, you know. And you see that in actuality, if you don't go to the direct experience, for example, if you don't go skydiving, because you still are going to meet someone who's going to skydiving, you're going to be trying to make that real for yourself. And when we try to make something real, we are beginning on the first, in a sense, naive postulate that there is a lack of fulfillment in the experience. And it's very multidimensional because on some level there's ignorance, but on another level there's your effort to move and you have to make mistakes and grow. Do you see? So what is ignorance in a multidimensional view? It is nothing. Every form in a multidimensional reality is nothing because you are aware of the presence of form in many other dimensions. And how are you aware of it? Well, you look at the objectivity you have now. As you're aware of this objectivity through your own sense of experience and paying attention to the nature of your vision and how your life has unfolded so far, every moment you have lived will be pointing to the beauty of the inspiration and the design in the current moment you're in. And that is why it doesn't matter what is talked about, regardless, the moment is being received in a way that because it's being expressed all the time, it does not need an explanation. Only the idea based on the ideal world needs a justification. Because once comparison is out of the picture, there are no frames. And so mankind doesn't need to frame himself constantly in thinking that he is this and then suddenly seeing that that too deconstructs. So the nature of construction is that it shouldn't be a dynamic where we're thinking, okay, this is being born, this is dying. No. We are interpreting in one plane of existence, in one sense of range of existential sensitivity, how things are beginning everywhere. And that's as if someone is trying to show you their house and you go in the first room, and when you go in the first room of that house, suddenly, you're like, I've seen the whole house. And they're like, I'm pretty sure you haven't. So it's very important to be aware in that manner, because something that is controversial is in the attention much differently than something is not. And you will see that sometimes because we are social creatures, we have to go into social systems where if we do not accept their flow, if we do not accept how that system is designed, we simply can't be a part of that system. We won't be acknowledged. If I don't have my driver's license, I can't drive. So similarly, in regards to consciousness, you need to recognize that it is not systematic anymore. It is actually that which is aware of the system, so it is beyond the system innately. So the system only came into the attention of the conscious being. Your sense of consciousness is an attention to life as life that is unspeakably the most beautiful peak of the experience that is present. What that means is it's a very interesting, fantastic feeling, I guess, when you've been looking at the shadows your whole life and suddenly you realize you've been basking in the light beam and you've just been looking at your shadow when the sun was above your head. And when you look at that sun, you'll remember the sun you have been and the father of existence that is watching you. Playfully, as we become familiar through family structures, those same dynamics will apply in how our fantasy transcends into reality. So if you're aware of a fantasy right now, any fantasy, you can really get to know yourself based on your own fantasy, not by judging yourself for what it is, but by simply seeing the nature of how you design vision. So what that means is if I come and speak to you and I say, what is happiness? It is not about a definition you tell me and then it's incomplete that someone else tells you a definition. No, it's about how aware you are of the uniqueness of why your vision of happiness means like that. Any great progress that man has ever done, the greatest minds of our generation and any generation have realized that in a selfless manner, and the same compassion that Dalai Lama speaks about, if we bring it into our thought, we will not judge the person through thought to then condemn through a physical response. We will create gentleness by bringing clarity through an awareness of human communication. And as human communication becomes aware of itself, you will see happiness did not have to mean that it would be the perfect solution based on all these things you're involved in. You have an involvement in life that is so profound that you are evolving in it. So as you become to even be aware of the nature of evolution, and this is what I really hoped many people would have gone towards through an understanding of evolution by saying, okay, that's crazy. So if we're evolving, what is the evolution of the vision? Every moment I open my eyes to the day that I will close them, let's say in a coffin to transition, as if we've just had a coffee, you'd see in our playfulness to allow reality to be reality, we do not try to control it as an individual aspect that the reality is controlling us. As long as the consciousness of your experience, of this human experience, thinks that the human is the only platform of conscious view, the objective physical form, in other words, your biology is the only thing that's here, then you are not becoming aware of what the biology implies. Because when I look at the day, I think about the night. When I look at night, I think about the day. When I look at form, wait a minute. Am I aware of the formless? If the sky is cyclically giving me lessons, could every moment, could every image that I consider to be solid be on some level infinitely bursting on the edge of my thought? For when you see a species develop in self-awareness, one of the first immediate problems that is really there is that they will associate themselves with names to evolve. But then as they evolve, they will then get rid of the names, and then later on they will become so sensitive that the technology will change because of the users of technology wanting to be present through a more graceful world. For as they're present in a graceful world, their experience on subtler planes is expanded. What that means is, what Mr.Within finds is that as you see the human being, it's born, and physically goes to the age of 30 where it's vital, and then, we begin to see the lowering of the curve of the golden ratio. We see the life is here to be alive, but when it tries to work with its livelihood as if it is if you make yourself a sense of it, in a very objective way, in a very subjective way, you are not allowing a relationship between objectivity and subjectivity to allow you to see beyond these. What that means is, imagine again that same example, same analogy, where you're in the house, someone's trying to show you the first room of the house, you know? And as they show you the first room of the house, suddenly you don't want to go see anywhere else, you know? It's as if you're stuck there. And what you will see happen is that if you do not allow yourself to flow with life, if you don't trust life, and if you stop making yourself feel as if it's the wrong time and space you're in, you will begin to see that the rightness will come through a righteousness within you. And this righteousness will immediately make your character so naturally beautiful that you will be fascinated. Because trust me, many people, their senses of self are based on how others have treated them. It is very rare a being who maintains only a sense of self, you know, without anyone else and anyone else's judgment. And when they do, that being is wearing very light garments and will have a very smooth transition out of this physical plane. Even though externally life may seem tough, but all that toughness will lead to a smooth transition. But again, all beings have their own sense of destination, and what that means is, I could in a sense say we're all walking in a park, but at the same time, everyone is doing their own walk, and you may walk outside of the areas of my exploration, and I hope the children of my children's children try to tear up every concept I'm speaking about, try to break it, and in a sense, see that evolution was its own game until the player was aware of the player, and the audience and the vision was the same. What that means is you need to not just plan for your retirement, you need to plan in a very immediate way of how you want to receive your life experience here. A lot of people accept what's put in front of them, and they go into those systems of behavior, and they're just in it so much that after some time, they don't even know who they are because they've been associating with the act. And you will see that it is much harder to go against a general problem than a specific problem. Because a general problem is being accepted as how do I say it, the most immediate idea. So if me and you were just thrown off a plane and we just opened our parachutes and we landed on an island, and we had a certain, let's say, task to retrieve something from this island, we begin to see suddenly, let us just say now, from that same plane, again, we jump off, we rewind and we jump off, and again we're landing on what? The beginning images of an idea. What that means is this image of the ground you're seeing is just as much an image to be experienced as the image of a thought. And sometimes the thoughts are creating physicality as if it's the shadow of a greater light. But this light is even beyond that which can be formed. So think of it this way. Everything that man is considering is anything that he can see and in a sense can be conscious of. But when you begin to look at what is being conscious, there is nothing that can be conscious because it is the universe looking at itself. You are life being aware of life. And in that, all segmentation cannot stay still. It's an infinitely changing world. So infinity is just how small you choose to consider and experience. And what that means is if I choose to say that my conscious view is the size of my fingernail, it will feel as if through the fingernail's experience, the size of the whole body is beyond everything. So what that means is a fingernail type of consciousness and the whole body's type of consciousness are different. And for the individual, it will feel infinite. But for the whole body, infinity never existed. And so you must choose the path you, in a sense, walk through to dissolve, to then integratively, through your own direct experience, see that transcendence. Was the smile that can never fade. It is your knowing of your being that is untouchable. And you find this, you'll be graceful, and you'll kind of get the sense, but it doesn't mean the journey is over. It means that every moment is your journey. And so experience it. Do not keep a sense of time and space. Because even if you were to consider yourself a being who had a more stable, not more stable even, if you had consciousness after physical transition, you would see that it would still be beyond the spectrum of your human form. So if before passing away, it is very important that mankind, the human experience, looks at the concept of life and death, so the living is realigned to the naturalness and the sincerity and honesty of direct experience. Once you do this, life will, in a sense, open up rivers of flows that will take you not to the plan you might have made, but to actually the state where your skill level will adjust the environment. What that means is more than any job that man is trying to become professional in, he must first trust the environment that is always his teacher. What that means is I used to talk a lot first and then listen, but then I started to listen and then talk. And I noticed that I have these both modalities of, in a sense, seeing a change in the origination of considered imagination, let's say, for that. But it's an awareness to yourself of planes of abstraction. And what I mean by that is I'm very playfully introducing you to a sense of multidimensionality that is beginning with conceptualization. So what that means is conceptually we are traveling through what could be a direct experience of life. So what that means is immediately as I'm in this park right now and I'm looking at this bench in front of me, this bench is physical, objective, I see it. Immediately there's the thought of a bench. Immediately there's the awareness that I'm speaking about the bench. Immediately there's the awareness of the whole moment that is present here. Immediately there's a sense of being in which there is an awareness to the sound, to the bench, to me, and every phenomena that is this moment, and it's unspeakably empty, but words can continue because the flows and the rivers have been found. And what that means is consciousness is not just what you do in which you then recognize it's a conscious action. Consciousness is the whole experience. And as you dive into the nature of how you have been alive, life will show you deathless eyes. And whatever that was controversial will become, I guess, uncontroversial. And you will see that you won't take the character in the story of life so seriously, because the character and the setting and everything were alive. And because they're alive, you need to choose how much wilderness you want to allow and how much you want to take that very how would I say it? Let's say it like this. Let's use my life example. Earlier in my life, I was the way my conditioning was, and of course this is my view on how I feel I was raised in this life. And of course it was a very, very blessed life. But to explain now, the conditioning was that I was caught in a sense of politeness where I did not want to break the rules, and I thought by not trying to step out what was the boundary, I would be comfortable. What that means is I wasn't an explorer for a long period. But then I began to realize that the nature of this reality is exploration. Regardless of how shy you are, life is growing in a way which is beyond that little tiny idea of, oh, I'm too stressed out, I'm too shy, whatever. No, you cannot be shy. Shy is a concept which you are associating to your physicality, which your nature of physicality is changing. And you will see that who you think you are now will not be who you think you will be in another environment. Let's say tomorrow when you wake up. So you are constantly changing in a sense of self because you're constantly handling different environments and you're present through different systems, both social and cultural. And it just like how we, in meditative practice, the yogis and mystics know, you would go sit down, be still, silent, and just observe the nature of how you're alive. Similarly, observe the nature of your body and what even space means to you. space and time, you would begin to see that it is an awareness that is open to itself being possible in any realm, because it is aware of all realms as being the intelligence. What that means is, let us say that there is an intelligence of creation in regards to how creation opens its eyes to recognize, and let's say there's an intelligence of creator, which is when the creation opens its eyes, it thinks about, oh, okay, maybe there was a creator. But then when it begins to look at the creator, it begins to see that just like how some people play, for example, the game squash or whatnot, you know, I've seen people play that. The room it's in, that squash room is in a sense, when you hit the ball, you see it bounce back, hitting the other wall and whatnot. So it's as if once you begin to see the nature of an intelligence originating from creation and an intelligence originating from creator, and where can the creation know about the creator? When it looks at creation, you will begin to see that even the observance of your ideas is a revelation beyond the bodies of thought that you exist in. What that means is, my name, let's say, Mr.Within, it is giving some conceptual imagery, even though it is very playfully dodging the bullets of duality. We need to observe ourselves. It seems that we're not just physical beings, we also have a subjective sense of presence that is constantly affecting this physicality, and so we need to use consciousness technologies that have been present in the past. And they're very simple, because the human being handles complexity by simplifying it. So these simple practices begin with nothing other than your attention, instead of going on externality or, oh, what's the most profound thing, the next teaching, going back to yourself. And what I really hope is that this intuitive library that is coming into being through this Mr.Within project, through this Mr.Within speech, you'd see it's an intuitive library, and I hope that you begin to intuitively work with life. You begin to trust life, and people will look at you and be like, what's different about this person? Let me tell you what's different. Your trust in life has become to such a degree where you are existentially comfortable in any sense of considered space and time. You're not trying to be something that is outside of your experience. So forget fantasy and superheroes. You're just bringing your experience to the simplicity that you are this moment, wherever you are right now. You can be aware of it, and you can be like, this is where I am now, and use this as a platform to begin observing this and seeing why you're here. When you look at why you are somewhere, immediately all locations come into such a sense of clarity that it's as if your silence and stillness always knew. And when you see people who are have a mastery beyond, how do I say it? It's as if they bring a sense of mastery that it cannot be taught to them. You can see that it's as if they know it, for they originated, as if they originated this idea here on display. You would see that which knows it is does not need to be. For that which is can always be. Something very interesting I would like to see happen with this Mr.Within YouTube channel is that people begin utilizing it intuitively when they feel, for example, something is, let's say something is bothering you. You just close your eyes and intuitively think of a number, you know. And as you think of this number, go check out the page and see that lecture and begin to see through the spontaneity how you know. So what that means is, through my knowing, I can never see how else I know. It is only when I don't know, when I don't, how do I say it, don't think of a thinker, that the answers are already omnipresent. Because it's an answer to the question, who am I? What is the nature of my being? And when such a question comes, there's a grand scene. You're no longer just walking invisibly on a battlefield of your past with your future, of how the present is going to turn out, as it already is. Your attention is going out of your sense of name and identity, and your sense of self is tapping into what it always was, which was an experiential being. When experience comes into being, it's that graceful presence which we saw back in the day in certain spiritual cultures, where the individual was not working with an individual consciousness, and so every individuality presented itself in the most exquisite way. It's as if some beings speak poetry and some beings live poetry. Their expression, it's just the flow of life. It's as if you're like, wow, I've seen climbers, people climb Mount Everest, but I've never seen a man climb himself out of the ideology which is keeping the incapable when capability is an infinite birthright for a deathless being. Because you transition. Even the death you fear now, even the death projected in movies, it's a transition. And trust me, you need to be aware. Because imagery is regulating how you are viewing yourself. And your sense of self, through compassion, you'd see that. But that's why compassion is an amazing technology, the most efficient technology. Because once you become compassionate, you are doing it sincerely for your world. So you're not measuring your contribution, so your expression is. It playfully is, and even when people give you rewards, you'd see certain Zen masters, it's as if they would not take praise. They would try to give such an eternal lesson that they would say, in this temporal life, every physicality is going to change. Realize yourself, find your real eyes. Why else is vision given? For it to be taken to new dimensions. Through the winds of transcendental awareness, you will begin to know yourself by how you are present within your world and how the world is present within you. These words are enough to guide you through any terminal, and as a pilot of consciousness, you need to realize the reason many beings and many realized beings said, be careful of your desires, was not to say, oh, that thing is hot, don't touch it, was because if you are not aware of the ability that you have, when you go into situations when people say you are not able, their vision would become more real than how much you have made it real for you that you are able. And so you must naturally flow. What I noticed is that, do I want to go get a notebook and just write the pros and cons of my life every day? Just, I'm going to make this kind of plan, this kind of... Well, of course, but then I'd be wasting a lot of paper, because I can internalize to a point that reality does not have to be an external need. So just as how simply you can drink a glass of water and put it away, as simply you can handle the deepest ideology. You can handle the heavy weights in conceptual phenomena. And what that means is, if I was to see these concepts as people in a classroom, you'd see some kids in this classroom, such as the concepts of death, hate, punishment, guilt, or whatever, are making a direct noise without looking at why they need to do that, why hate needs to be there, why death needs to be there. And then we see the other people in the class are, for example, love, compassion, or whatever, and they're their own nature too, and they're less simple. They're just aware, they're in love. They're looking around, these classmates. But what we are seeing in actuality is that conceptualization is how your experience through a certain happening is reassigning value to image. And as it assigns such a value to image, it begins to see that the value of the image changes as the same image is experienced again. So the phenomena in how, let's say, we're looking at our neurology is that there is a sense of re-experience, but in that re-experience there's a recreation. So as if every moment is a new moment, but at the same time we're bringing something from the past, which is how we were before, you know? So it's as if like we have a sense of change, which is creating the past and the sense of future, but when we transcend that observance, what that means is it's when you're walking in the room, or let's say if I'm sitting in a room, as an individual, yes, I have a lot of space and I could create infinite space of moving in so many positions in this room. But at the same time that I'm in this room, the awareness of the room to me is of a totally different intelligence. And this awareness of the room to you is actually similar to how the awareness of the whole world, how your moment of experience, the cosmos, is aware of you. So you will take your ideas seriously because they are suggesting the shapes of how your experiences are being relevant to one another. But you are a shapeless experiencer. And perhaps that is the treasure we had come to that island of thought to reveal. For that which is blissful is not needing more than what it has, because what it has as consciousness is always full through any consideration of emptiness. What that means is, if you are taking the consideration that you're calling yourself stressed, depressed, or something, I want you to tear up those images of stress that you're visualizing. Just ask yourself, why am I stressed out? Why am I depressed? Why am I shy? And you begin to see that this intensity will follow through. The intensity of your own honest search is all you're required to be aware of, and in that awareness you see it's all your moment. And perhaps just like how a man named Adyashanti, a very, very graceful and aware being, when he heard the concept of enlightenment, it seems, he went to his backyard and sat in a tent for a day to just be observant of what, to try to attain enlightenment. And regardless of what went through his mind, when a human being does that, you can see that the longing that not even person, that origination of awareness has to know why it is here. When you want to know why you're here, who can stop you? Who can deny you? But the idea of a self that is already denied. You are denied nothing, you are able. The hierarchy is here to be used as a tool in regards to how experience is made aware of, in regards to how form and formless are dancing within one another. But you're not here to create a hierarchy and a spectrum which then becomes barricades which you must bring the armies of transcendence to break. For some celestial generals, we're never here. The cosmos is their knowing. What that means is you are considering that your house is your home. Your family is your home. But the mystic, the yogi, and perhaps what Adyashanti could have experienced in that day is that the experience of life is the whole that is now looking at this individual. So it's that moment where, and this of course can happen, consciousness surprises itself in ways that man can never expect. And what that means is, if you were sitting in a room or in a tent and you were aware of you as an individual, aware to everything else, let's say, you have the awareness of you to the space around you, to the tent and whatnot, your consciousness is simultaneously having an experience of the space of the room. Any part of a consideration you have of this world that is present in a sense of projection is real and you're experiencing it. And you will see that your memories are multidimensional as well. And that is why there isn't forgetfulness, but there is insane transition. What that means is, imagine that individual consciousness of that drop suddenly going into a river, falling into a stream, and it's in a collective experience. So what that means is this individual consciousness is simultaneously being present to a greater experience of a collective consciousness, which is a dynamic flow. So it's no longer ideas, it's just a direct experience. And as that experience is flowing, that sense of a drop can visualize within that greater flow many senses of being a drop. What that means is the river is composed of many drops. And so the intensity of that is an intelligence that is always beyond the ability of just being one individual or the ability of just being many individuals simultaneously, and not individual people, but individual considerations of a sense of self based on the many worlds that can be considered. You will see the positioning is placeless, is timeless, is spaceless, and so perhaps some teachings are really priceless. Don't use the word wealth without being aware of the wealth of self-awareness. For then, all complexity would dissolve into the simplest expression that is now. And it's a very playful transition because you don't just feel like an individual in this world, you also feel an intelligence of the world that is within the individual, which then you cultivate this, you know. I had a math teacher who said that he would get a roll of string and he would take it out of his he would put it in his pocket, and he'd get a needle and he'd bring the string out of his, coat, and he'd ask people to pull that thread, and they'd see it never end. And and sometimes you wonder that if you pull the thread of this reality, where is it kept? As you excitingly explore it, you begin to see that our playfulness leads to many senses of an infinite possibility. But all infinite possibilities are made aware of through their temporal phenomena. What that means is how they are is suggesting how they can be. The emptiness of the page is actually the most brilliant note that you can seek. What that means is some speakers take notes with them, but some speakers take the empty page, for then they will be reminded of what needs to be written. Much blessings and namaste.